guys, welcome to the Treasury Update Podcast Coffee Break Session, the show where we cover foundational Treasury topics and questions in about the same amount of time it takes you to drink your coffee. This is your host, Alexa, joined today with Craig Jeffery, Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome back, Craig.
Hello, Alexa.
Thanks for joining me today. So today we're going to just jump right in and discuss what is netting. So Craig, do you just want to give us a quick high-level overview of what netting is?
If two people or two entities owe each other money, instead of saying, I owe you $5, I owe you $10, I owe you $8, and the other one says, I owe you $6, $5, and $2, instead of settling 6 transactions, they say, here's the net, and they'll make just the transfer for the amount that's owed, and they do it at a organized time. So netting reduces the actual transactions that move through a banking system, which has many benefits. So that's at its most simple level. It's bilateral between two parties. And in this case, it's also one currency. But netting can be lots of additional parties, which means there's a lot more transactions between, if there's two parties, there's one potential back and forth. If there's 3, you've got 3. If there's 4, you keep expanding what those options are. So it's a great simplifying tool, efficiency tool, and cost reduction tool.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there different types of netting? I know you said maybe one party or multiple parties, but are there any other ways or different types within that?
I think the example I gave before was bilateral single currency, but there could be, if there's multilateral, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 50 entities in a legal entity structure. Well, that multilateral would include 50. And then it doesn't have to be just a single currency that's settled or managed in this netting process. It could be, multiple currency. So there's multilateral, multi-currency, different types of netting.
What are some of the benefits of netting, whether it's bilateral, multilateral, multi-currency, or even single currency?
Yeah, most of it centers around efficiency of time and efficiency of cost or cost savings. So why you would want to do netting is when you start to move money, especially if you move in different currencies, now you've got FX transaction costs that you're managing, and you're doing lots of trades that all have an additional cost to them. The other aspect is it might be a lot easier to do accounting entries for many of these transactions as opposed to run them through the bank, whether it's settled by wire or high value transfers or lower value transfers. You reduce all of the or most of the charges that will come about by physically moving funds between bank accounts. Those are two of the big reasons. I mean, the other aspect, in addition to the regular FX, is you may have a lot of activity that now you're paying all this activity, all this transfer activity, where a lot of these currency exposures back and forth may be almost completely offset with what would be referred to as a natural hedge or a natural currency hedge.
Okay. What are maybe some of the challenges that might pop up with netting?
Typically, once you get beyond a certain point of activity, you're going to want to pay for a netting service. This could be a dedicated netting service like Euronetting, or it could be something that runs through a treasury management system. Some of the ERP systems have pretty decent capabilities in the netting domain as well. So you want to manage that activity within a system. And so there's the keeping track of who owes what to whom. Then there's the whole settlement timing. When do you say, here's the date that we decide what's going to be settled, and then here's the date that we're actually going to settle it. So you want to make sure that entity 1 thinks they have a 100,000 USD receivable from entity 3, but entity 3 disputes it. So there's an aspect of, not only keeping track of those items, but the dispute mechanisms that are part of trade. And sometimes that's solved within netting, and sometimes it's treated as a separate activity and process flow.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there a certain point, companies might hit or transaction level in which they should start netting?
Yeah, because there's a number of components, number of transactions, cost of bank charges, cost of the currency activity, and how many invoices there are, and how much time that takes. So the factors are it's usually easy to figure out across 5 or 6 factors, but it's driven by bank charges, foreign currency transactions, and efficiency that can be delivered from it. As soon as you have a moderately complex corporate banking structure that trades within itself, you're oftentimes finding a benefit from netting at a fairly low level of revenue and a fairly moderate or modest level of transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. So I think we're at about time, so I'll do a quick recap. Starting out, what is netting? It's really just the practice of settling any back and forth activity between organizations. And I know that you said there's either bilateral or multilateral, so whether that's single currency or multi-currency with multiple entities, there's the different types of netting. And then some of the benefits are really efficiency of time or cost reductions. And some of the challenges that might come really sounded like the housekeeping with it, whether it's keeping track of things or any of those settlement timings. And I don't know if you wanted to add anything there or if I skimmed over it too quickly.
Yeah, so I think if anybody has that type of multiple entities that are doing some type of trade or transactions between one another, it's pretty easy to figure out if netting makes sense. And a lot of the tools that help you with that are exceedingly affordable for what you get. So certainly worth a look if that's your corporate experience.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Craig, and to all of our listeners, make sure you tune in every first and third Thursday of the month for a new podcast. And as always, we look forward to hearing from you, and you're more than welcome to send us an email at podcast@strategictreasure.com. Thanks again, Craig.
This podcast is provided for informational purposes only, and statements made by Strategic Treasure LLC on this podcast are not intended as legal, business, consulting, or tax advice. For more information, visit and bookmark strategictreasurer.com.